Hello. As ever, we've not started yet, but we'll be starting in about 12 minutes, so you'll be able to listen to my voice at that point. But in the meantime, for the people who are here, maybe you can start introducing yourselves so that Hi, Naveen. Good afternoon. Huzefa, because this is a webinar, you won't be able to open your mic in your video, but you can always use the chat option to say anything to the other participants. And if you do have any questions, there should be a question and answer panel over there where you can type any questions to me, and I will be answering them after the webinar. Hello. Hi, everyone. We'll just get started. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Just to start off, hi everyone. It's great to see all of you here today. My name is Mariam Lotia, and I am a SHRM certified professional. And currently, I'm working with Meteor as a senior HR consultant. So the Great Resignation is something that all of us professionals have had to manage recently, and cutting turnover has been one of the biggest challenges for all organizations. So in this webinar, we're going to be covering specific steps that your organization can take to turn this turnover around. And I really hope that after today, your organization can create an effective strategy for this. I will be taking questions in the end, and there is a question and answer section at the end of the webinar. And I just encourage all of you to participate. So let's just start off with a small poll. How many of you have heard of the Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffle? Okay, so we have a pretty diverse result that's come in. 56% of you have said yes, and 44% of you have said no. So I really hope that there's, for those who haven't heard about it, you're fully going to be aware of what the Great Resignation is and how you can actually curb the turnover in your organization at the end of this webinar. Okay. So let's just dive in then. During the pandemic, the world changed. There were lockdowns, there were quarantines, and there was work from home. And there were a lot of businesses that started laying off employees. They weren't able to give salaries on time or even at all. They weren't giving bonuses. And a lot of businesses were actually going out, they were going bankrupt and they weren't in business anymore. And what started happening was a lot of employees started working from home for extended periods. And for a majority of those employees, this was the first time in their lives that they started working from home and they had that flexible career option. And then what we saw was, with such a large scale disruption in the economy and the lives of millions of people, is employees started having a renewed focus on what mattered to them the most. They started reevaluating what the priorities were in their life, what kind of a career they wanted in the future. And this period of reflection, it led employees to rethink about their jobs and what kind of a career path they wanted. And because of this, employees started leaving organizations. And the primary reason for this was burnout and a toxic work culture. So, nearly 4.5 million people in the United States resigned from their jobs in November 2021, according to The Economist. So from these, we have 40% of them who left their jobs because they were too stressed or they were too burnt out. And this is the major reason. 28% of them left without having another job offer. And this is really interesting because earlier there were a lot of employees who wanted a stable income coming in, but now we're seeing that there are a lot of other things that actually play a part in, an employee deciding whether to stay or leave an organization, such as mental health. And people aren't afraid to quit if the job that they're at is not matching the expectations that they have in their minds of what their job should be. And 37% of employees actually left for the traditional reason of just wanting better compensation. So one thing I do want to point out is the Great Resignation is not something that suddenly happened because of the pandemic. It's been building up for years, and but what triggered it is that employees just have a lot more time to reflect on what truly matters to them, and that's created this phenomena of the Great Resignation or the Great Quit. So, what is the future of work? employees have started rethinking the role of work in their lives. It's not only based on compensation, but also things like flexibility, purpose, and a work-life balance, things which maybe they wouldn't have looked at in the past. Um, and a lot of employees that have stayed put in their current job for the large part of the pandemic, they started rethinking their priorities, and they started thinking and planning about making the shift to a better organization. And during pandemic, there were a lot of employees that were working longer hours. They were experiencing stress and burnout. And while working from home, a lot of employees started spending a lot more times with their loved ones, and they got a chance to reevaluate their careers and the work-life balance that they had. And all of this actually, impacted their reason to stay or leave the organization. Also, we had a large talent gap across most of the industries because there were a lot of resignations, and because there was a lot of opportunities available, the people who wanted to leave saw that there were a lot of positions available for them to join, and that kind of created a whole cycle of the Great Resignation. So this Great Resignation actually started off in the United States, but it's slowly been making its way across the globe. And while some countries, we've still not seen the great wave of the quitting, but we have seen surveys that are indicating this isn't going to be long. Eventually, the whole world is going to be affected by the Great Resignation. And that's why it's so important for all of us to look at retention strategies so that, when it does hit your country, you are prepared and you do know what kind of strategies to take. And you know us as employers, we really need to start looking at these challenges, otherwise you're going to be losing top talent, and top talent is very difficult to find at the moment in the market, and the focus needs to be on the attraction and the retention strategies in the coming year. So in a study conducted by Adobe, 33% of global SMB leaders have felt the impact of the Great Resignation, and they're struggling with this employee burnout. Many employers have actually been proactive, and 66% of them have started making changes in their policies. They've started making changes in the company culture and just the way they view employees in general in the organization to better retain and recruit those employees. Okay, so what are the solutions? So what most companies have been doing in response to the Great Resignation is increasing the pay of the employees. And this is a very short-term cure because it's not pay that employees are ultimately resigning for. Pay means more to people who are newly hired than those who have been working in your organization for longer. So it's not only the compensation strategy you want to change. There is no one size fits all. You need to understand what your employees want, what kind of benefits matter to them. Is it flexible working benefits? Is it compensation? Is it developmental opportunities? What kind of changes do they want in the organization for them to stay even longer? And so companies are going to have to reevaluate their entire working models, their culture, what kind of things they value as a company. And when deciding what the first step should be, HR professionals need to focus on the complete life cycle, the complete employee life cycle. So a lot of people term the Great Resignation as something bad, like the Great Resignation is happening, a lot of people are quitting, it's bad for our organization. But this can actually be considered a good thing for organizations because it gives the company a chance to create new frameworks. It gives them a chance to create new workplace norms that are going to be leading to even greater effectiveness and fulfillment from the employee. And you're also going to be able to attract better talent and people who are more suited towards the kind of jobs you have in your organization. The skills, the interests, and personal lives of employees will also play a part in this. And this is going to change not just the fundamentals of how people are working, but why people are coming to work and why they're coming to your organization in general. So the impact of supervisors actually plays a huge part in the retention of an employee. And we all know this, that the number one reasons an employee decides to leave or stay in an organization is a supervisor. So the first step to actually curbing attrition is to understand what your employees want. Your executives need to know that there's no fast fix to the Great Resignation. There's no putting a band-aid on this problem until it gets better. And the key to this is actually getting the management of your company on board, and people strategy needs to be at the forefront of all issues in the company because you're not going to get anything done without the people. And it's very hard to find and get good people on board. So as I mentioned again, the number one reasons why employees stay or leave, engage or disengage is how much they trust their immediate supervisors. It doesn't mean that every time somebody quits, they distrust their boss. But what it does mean is that if you're going to start solving the turnover, you better start here. And this is a universal reason employees across the world leave their jobs due to their relationships with their supervisors. And for this reason, we have a phenomenon called the stay interviews. Stay interviews are basically structured conversations that a supervisor conducts with each employee. And the goal that they have in mind is to discover what kind of actions they need to take to strengthen that employee's engagement and the retention with the organization. And when you have a stay interview with your employee, it is actually going to help you build a more productive one-on-one relationship with your employee. So we all know the concept of exit interviews, which is basically finding out why an employee is leaving the organization. But why don't we take this a step further and actually conduct stay interviews when the employee is still working with the organization? And this is something that is going to help you understand the problem so that you can rectify it as much as possible. And you don't have the employees thinking about resigning in the first place. And when you conduct these stay interviews, the information that you get out of them, you can use that to guide your company policy, you can use it to make changes in the corporate culture, and also just to keep your talent engaged and loyal to your organization. So I have a short video here that will explain a bit more in detail about what stay interviews are and why they're so important. Just give me.
Natalie and David, employers are finding that the so-called stay interview may be as valuable as offering flexible time, remote work, or even a pay raise. And this is the opposite of an exit interview. It's a conversation with the goal of hanging on to good employees.
Of the many challenging jobs in the pandemic, Quinetta Griffin has a uniquely tricky position. Her employer, New Jersey-based Quest Diagnostics, is a leader in COVID testing, and she's on the customer service team handling the results.
When you get bombarded by someone who just kind of takes over the call and right then and there, you're like, whew.
Working from home, the grind and the isolation, familiar to so many, took a toll.
I wasn't feeling value. I wasn't feeling heard. I wasn't feeling supported.
A record number of people have, an average of 3.9 million a month last year in the so-called Great Resignation.
Many of us have said we'd rather work for ourselves. We don't want to work in this job. I'm never going to work for that boss. I'm never going to work that schedule.
But Dick Finnegan, a top consultant and author on employee retention, says it all comes back to this.
The data says the number one reason why employees stay or leave is how much they trust their immediate supervisor.
It's a message that resonated with Cecilia McKinney, the head of human resources for Quest's 50,000 employees. She was dealing with 50% turnover in patient and customer service until she launched stay interviews.
5 simple questions where the supervisor and the employee sit down one-on-one. Is there anything that you need help to learn on the job? How are you feeling about working at Quest? Those are the types of questions that prompt honest conversations.
When Quinetta heard the plan,
I was thinking, put on your seatbelt because here goes everything. I'm going to tell you. If you ask me, I'm going to tell you.
Companies are realizing honesty is the best policy, turning to stay interviews as flex time, remote work, and even more money on their own have failed to keep employees from walking away.
Because you can't do anything about an employee's concern if you don't know what they are.
I like money. Don't get me wrong. I like money, okay? But it's just not at the top of my list.
Quinetta was direct with her supervisor.
I told her that I need her to be more open in her communications, more present. If I were a betting woman, I would say that a lot of other people are looking for the same thing.
Now, if your boss calls you for a stay interview, HR experts say that you should be honest, but be constructive. Consider what will motivate you and bring it to your manager's attention. Have reasonable expectations and be specific about what you want. Stay interviews may not always keep someone from leaving, but they can help employers better understand how to keep valuable people on the team, and that is the goal. Natalie? Wow. Natalie?
Right. And these are the kind of things that you can actually ask in a stay interview when you travel to work each day. What are the kind of things that you look forward to? What are you learning in this organization? Why are you staying here with us in this company? Uh, when was the last time you thought about leaving our team? And what prompted it? And what can I do as a supervisor to make your experience at work better for you? And these are the things that you can actually ask. All of these things are going to be helping you understand your employee better and creating strategies to reduce the turnover in your organization. So what kind of other retention strategies can we have? Once you know what your employees want, you can use that to make your culture and your employee experience even better. And employees have started evaluating who they work for, what kind of values the company has, and the experience that they're going to be getting or having within the organization at that time. So now employees don't actually want a productive, engaging, and enjoyable work experience. It's something that they expect. They expect a productive, engaging, and enjoyable work experience. And so we all know that there's a war for talent at the moment. It's very difficult to find the right person for the job that you're looking for, and companies need to make sure that that culture and the focus on employee experience is what differentiates them, because in the long run this is what's going to help you create an engaged and a loyal workforce. So just coming to the different retention strategies, the first is developing career development plans. What you can do is you can work with your employees to create a plan for the development, and it's a great way to encourage retention because it gives people a goal to work towards, and it can actually be a huge motivating factor because they know what they're contributing towards. So you can actually have quarterly, biannual, or even annual career conversations where you're sitting down with your employees as a manager and discussing where they want to be, how they can get there, and what kind of opportunities are actually open to them within the organization. And this will actually increase their engagement with the organization. Another good way for employees to feel seen and appreciated at work is to have internal award programs where you're recognizing your employees for their hard work. So you show employees what you value, what they, you show employees that you value what they do for your business, what they're bringing to the table, and how much of an impact they've created within your company. So in practice, this can look like a peer recognition program where you have co-workers nominating other team members, or even maybe even a manager nominated program. Okay. So the third point that we have, which is creating an inclusive work environment. A workplace that is inclusive is very critical to retention because employees who feel safe and valued in your organization are a lot more likely to stay with your company than those who don't. So that means it's very important to champion the diversity, champion the inclusion and belonging at work, so that each of your individual employees, they feel recognized and even cared for by your business. And you can just do things like educating your managers on the benefits of diversity and the importance of diversity as well. You can create better and more inclusive work policies. You can create mentorship and relocation programs as well. And we've seen that companies who don't practice diversity, they see the effects in retention. So for example, in the United States, they had nearly 50% of people of color that quit their job because of experiencing discrimination or some kind of a problem at work where they weren't feeling inclusive, or they were feeling discriminated against. Then we have work-life balance, and this is one of the more important ones because most organizations do struggle with this. Employees who feel that they're expected to be in work mode 24/7, they're going to be stressed and they're most likely going to be burnt out, and they're going to develop those feelings. And when they do start developing feelings of burning out, they are going to start looking for other jobs where they are going to be able to get that work-life balance, which maybe your organization doesn't offer. So what you can do is instead you can encourage people to have like a work-life balance, and you can make sure that they set boundaries. So for example, maybe you have people set time frames where they're going to be working, and time frames where they're going to be putting everything aside and going to spend time with their family or doing something that they love doing, and they can pick up the work tomorrow, if there's no urgent deadline. And you can also encourage employees to take mandatory leaves or take time off when necessary, or even just small breaks during the workday to kind of encourage that work-life balance. You can also show employees how their work matters. So a great way to actually help employees see that their job means something is to make sure that they know how their work is affecting the end customer. And you can do this by highlighting customer success stories or maybe case studies where you have the employees, who can see the impact that their work has made in the organization. The last retention strategy that we have is providing managerial training. And in my opinion, it is the most important one because employees sometimes, most of the time actually, they leave their jobs because they don't feel supported by their managers. And to combat this, you can ensure that your business invests in effective training for managers so that those managers in turn can support the employees and their development. When you say effective training, it doesn't only mean supporting them for their development. It also means that they're equipped and they're trained to have those tough conversations with your employees when necessary, like letting them know that they need to develop certain skills even further, or they need to make changes in their job processes. So all in all, people really want to feel that their managers care about them, and proper training on this can ensure that this happens. Another thing that employers can do is provide professional development opportunities. So you want employees to receive the training that they need to succeed in their jobs. And by doing this, employees can progress into new roles within your organization instead of looking for opportunities elsewhere. So, for example, you can say you have an employee in your organization and they're stuck in a rut. They're doing very routine tasks. They feel that their work is very automated. So, if there are no opportunities at your current workplace to actually learn new skills, they're going to be looking for opportunities in other companies that are going to be allowing them to learn those new skills. So instead, if an employee can develop additional skills while still working in your current company and remaining on the job, they are going to be a lot more likely to stay. And you can also provide career advancement opportunities to your employees by promoting from within instead of looking for external candidates. Of course, if that current employee does have the relevant skills. We have mentorship programs, educational development programs, and you can also include professional development in employee goals. And that can actually be a big turning factor for employees when they decide whether they want to stay in the company or they want to leave. I think one of the biggest retention factors post-pandemic has been that ability to provide flexible working arrangements to the employees. A lot of employees, as I mentioned before, they've started working from home, and it's the first time that they're experiencing that flexibility and that kind of a working arrangement. And so it's become very difficult to actually get them to come back to office. Microsoft published a work trend index in 2021 that showed that in 30,000 employees across 31 countries, 2/5 of the people were considering leaving their jobs in the next year. And one of the main reasons for this was the flexibility, and it was the hybrid work opportunities that were being offered in the place that they were working. And employees actually started valuing the ability to work from home and having flexible work arrangements. And for a lot of companies, that became the differentiating factor in the way that they were attracting and they were advertising and retaining a lot of their top talent. Again, there was another report that was published by LinkedIn, their global talent report, and they named 4 P's of employee experience: so people, place, product, and process. So place was mainly concerning employee retention, which was meaning that where employees work, whether it was physically in office, whether it was remote, or whether it was a combination of two. And this just meant that there was a critical aspect of employee retention in offering employees a chance to choose what their preferred mode of working was going to be. So whether it was going to be completely working, coming to office physically, whether it was going to be, completely working at home, or whether it was going to be a hybrid option between the two. And by doing this and by allowing the employees to actually choose what they wanted to do, people became a lot more satisfied. Their attrition, actually reduced, and they were able to retain a lot of their top talent. And there were a lot of people like working mothers, people who were caregivers for their families, who might have actually stopped working if they weren't given these flexible work arrangements. So for a lot of companies, that actually also helped in retaining those top talent that they wanted to stay. And employers actually have to take these wants a lot more seriously, because ultimately everybody is competing for the top talent. And if you're ignoring these figures, it's going to make it very difficult for you in the long run to get the right people on board. And flexibility has become one of the main differentiating factors now for a lot of companies post-COVID. So, we do need to take this seriously. Okay. So that is the end of my presentation. I would be taking questions. I do have my email ID here as well, in case you do want to contact me after the presentation. So yes. Any questions? I would be taking that. There should be a panel there for you to ask. Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions. And yes, I will be sharing the recording of the sessions for whoever wants to view them. I think, Maruk, it depends organization to organization what works for them. I think in some organizations you can't give unlimited leaves, but there has also been a trend of forced leaves, which works for some companies. Where they do want to develop successors, and it's a good option for a lot of companies to have. So I think you can't really say what's right or what's wrong. It just depends company to company what works for them. Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. I will be sharing this webinar again. And you can always contact me at my email ID, mariem@lotia@meteorme.net. Thank you.